I had absolutely, positively no intention of becoming a professional artist. Now that I've been doing it for so long, I can't imagine doing anything else. I started working at a frame shop. I brought in some things, framed them up. People were responding to them. They wanted to purchase it, which I thought was completely bizarre, that I could do this and somebody would want to buy it. A lot of my artwork is influenced by my being from Cuba. I have very bittersweet memories of it because I had a very nice childhood, loved my parents, I just didn't have them long enough. My mom died when I was very young, and then I didn't see my dad after I left when I was 9. In 1966, my father took me aside and said, look, there's an opportunity because your aunt and uncle have a son in the States. There's an opportunity for you to go with them, and I think that you would, have a much better life by going. I find what he did extremely inspiring because it takes an incredible amount of strength to say, I feel that your life would be better without me. And this was such a selfless act to me that I've always held my father in the highest esteem. A lot of my inspiration and my strength is drawn from that. I always go back to that space, always go back to the time that made such a huge, huge difference in my life. Having been born in a place and all of a sudden, from one day to the next, you're living in a completely different country with a different language and without your family. First few shows that I had here, they were all very figurative works, and I think I was sort of working through the difference in culture between, Cuba and even Miami, and then being in Seattle, which was completely different. And I think I needed to have the color of my native culture and to have the figures and to draw on some of the things that I remembered as a kid, like carnival and music and conga drums and parades and dancing. I met Jacob Lawrence a while back. He showed at the same gallery where I show, Francine Seders Gallery, and I think if I had to pick a visual artist that I was most inspired by, it would be him. Not just because of his work, but because of the kind of person that he was. He was really inspiring. He was always encouraging. Jacob did something extremely wonderful for me a few years back. Art News asked 10 very well-known artists around the country whom they thought people should look at, and as far as visual artists kind of coming up, and he chose me. I was so honored, the fact that he had even noticed my work. There came a time where I wanted to do floral work. They were always kind of made up. I mean, they were based on flowers, but there was always something fantastical about the images that I was doing. And they're also, very sensuous. A few years ago, I did an exhibit called Weathered. Mostly it was about the facades of buildings in Havana that are still so incredibly beautiful, but they're very weathered by time and the fact that a lot of them have not been kept up or repaired. It made me think that just because something was old and weathered, it didn't necessarily lose its beauty. And I'm still creating work now that feels weathered. This is one of the projects that I'm working on right now, and hopefully it'll be installed very soon. But this is a project that was commissioned by the King County Housing Authority for this neighborhood. It's called the Greenbridge neighborhood. I'm really kind of proud of this project because of the nature of it. This community is pretty much a lot of immigrants, which I'm very familiar with, and it's nice that they're actually putting in parks and art in the parks and trails, and it really makes the standard of living, I think, higher for people that really need it. The work that I'm doing now started with a body of work that I did a couple of years ago called Smoke and Mirrors. These pieces that I'm doing have basically a central figure that's mostly black. There's this kind of silvery gray shadow. They don't necessarily match up. So I want to make the viewer look at it and go, wait a minute, the shadow is like up here on this one area and it's kind of completely distorted over here. Well, that's reality. A couple of things inspired me. They were like little switches that turn on sometimes when you're trying to come up with an idea. One of them was being at the Pike Place Market and watching this guy that was doing balloon animals. And I thought they were kind of obscene, but yet there were all these families buying these balloon animals and putting them on their kids' heads. But they didn't see it that way. They didn't see any of that. They just saw the cute balloon. Another thing that I was thinking when I started this series is the movie Nosferatu, the very old, I think it was from the 20s. The actual vampire is walking up the stairs, and then there's this beautiful, beautiful shadow of his hands, and they're so exaggerated and they're reaching so much further than his hands could actually reach. And I thought that that was really fascinating, and I wanted to kind of play with that. The shadow is doing something completely different. You need to watch what that shadow is doing, because what's being presented to you may not be necessarily the whole truth. And I think in this political climate, it was very important for me to address that in some way that was artistic and political, but not overtly political. I'm not out to make political art. A lot of the things that I hear the current administration saying were the exact same things that I heard when I was a kid being said by the Cuban regime. If you're not with us, you're against us. It's best to give up these rights for the benefit of the whole. And I'm going like, wait a minute, you know, no, I'm not willing to do that again. To me, the experience of creating the work, it's what's important. It's like my moment of Zen, my moment of peace to work those things out in my own mind. And the easiest way for me to work them out is to put them down on paper or canvas.